The words of Stevie Marriott, this next one coming up is going to be a long one. And it starts with a story of sorts. So, if there's too much blah blah, not enough, then maybe scroll on, right? But this story is pretty important to me. So, if you go back to the 70s, if you have been on the planet that long, obviously no YouTube, not really music magazines, not really guitar magazines. In the UK there's Beat Instrumental, and there was the sort of pop music papers, NME, we'll get back to him in a minute, or them, Melody Maker, Disc, that sort of thing, right? But there wasn't really much information. So if somebody said to you, I've heard this great guitar player called Steve Hillage, you had to find somebody that you knew who had that record and say, could you let me hear that record? And we would all borrow each other's records, and don't look back on it with rose-tinted glasses, but it was a great time because everything was sort of mysterious. A lot of albums you had, you didn't actually know what the guys looked like, and that's a better way to listen to music, obviously, right? In some instances. So, I had been a massive Mick Ronson fan, and I had seen Mick Ronson play with David Bowie, and I had seen Mick Ronson at the Liverpool Empire, I think it was, doing his solo show where he played Slaughter on 10th Avenue and Love Me Tender, the Elvis song, right? And as you may know, David Bowie then put together this super band of bands that was arranged, I think, if I get any of this wrong, please tell me, by Michael Kamen, the composer you may know from the Lethal Weapon soundtrack. That one, right? And lots of other soundtracks. And Michael Kamen had worked with Earl Slick, Frankie Madaloni as was. And he put together just this unbelievable band. Herbie Flowers, who you will know from Walk on the Wild Side, the bass player. David Sanborn on the sax, Michael Kamen on the keys. And he tried to, in a step that was way ahead of its time, fuse sort of straight rock and roll, like maybe the Dolls, with a more classical film soundtrack background. And he had come across Earl Slick. So he put together this band for David Bowie, and it resulted in a fanfare, David Live. Now, I in those days you didn't have, because you're in your teens, you didn't have the wherewithal to buy every album that you were interested in, so you had to kind of pick and choose a little bit when you had money. So I had Aladdin Sane on vinyl, but I didn't have pin-ups, it's all the covers by David Bowie, and for some reason I wasn't really attracted to the whole Diamond Dogs concept, which is a mistake. And then he brought out this double live album. Double live albums were the thing in those days. I didn't have this one, but my mid-teen mind was racing who could possibly replace Mick Ronson. And guitar, Earl Slick. But I had no concept of what Earl Slick might look like. And he looks great to this day. I mean, Earl Slick is like the embodiment of rock and roll. And I figured in my head that Earl Slick would look like someone whose name was Earl Slick, and nothing like. Well, he actually wasn't. He was also very, very young when he recorded this stuff, right? So I read a review of David Live in the aforementioned NME music paper. And the review is by Charles Shermurray, who's written some great books. He wrote maybe the best Jimi Hendrix book called Crosstown Traffic, although I would probably go for David Henderson's Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky, which is a fantastic book. If you can find that and you like Jimmy's playing, you get that, and Charles Shermurray's. Charles Shaar Murray, who was an enormous David Bowie fan, and had championed David Bowie as this, visionary, imaginative genius from day one, really, wrote this review of David Live. And as I say, I had Aladdin Sane, so I knew this great riff that went. Panic in Detroit. I was going to say Cracked Actor. Cracked Actor's great too, but Panic in Detroit. And Charles Shaar Murray wrote a review of the album, the song Panic in Detroit, and Earl Slick's contribution to it, which was pretty lacerating, right? And I thought, And I can remember as a kid thinking, well, maybe I should hear this, because maybe this is the level you have to be a professional guitar player. So, if you could play Earl Slick's Panic in Detroit solo that Charles Shaar Murray has weighed in on very, very critically, then maybe you've got a shot. And little did I know. Right? So, fast forward to the CD era, and every time you were in a CD shop, from the early days when basically they had very little. You had to just look for ages to find an album that you had on vinyl that you went, I bet that would sound great on CD. The first CDs I owned were Jimi Hendrix Live at Winterland, Dave Edmunds Live, 2 live ones, and Rick Springfield, Success Hasn't Spoiled Me Yet, because there wasn't a great choice. All those two are great movie, but there wasn't a great choice available. As the years went on, I thought, man, I've just got, I still hadn't heard Earl Slick's solo in Panic in Detroit, but in the intervening years, I had bought this pile of Earl Slick albums, which I loved. The Earl Slick Band, the Razor Sharp, the follow-up to it, his solo album, Surfer Junkie Dude, and I was a real fan. There's now a live Earl Slick Band CD that you can get. There's an outtake CD. You can absolutely fill your head with Earl Slick's fabulous playing. So I was always of the opinion, why did this guy hate Panic in Detroit so much? Because Earl Slick is sensational. What's wrong with this guy? But I could never find it, and I never really found a friend who had a copy of David Live. And I always just think, well, if you're at someone's house and they've got a big row of albums, you can say, oh, could I hear that one? I've always wanted to hear that record. I never find it. So we're now talking. We're now talking 30 years after the album came out, and I still hadn't heard Earl Slick on Panic in Detroit. So, and in a CD shop, I would constantly think, well, who do I like? And you can say any letter. It could be Aerosmith, it could be the Allmans, whatever. You can do that. So I would always kind of look, if I was going to buy a pile of CDs, and I would always look under B for David Bowie, and they would maybe have on CD Aladdin Sane, as I said, I've got that one. Ziggy Stardust, they would have Low, they would have Heroes, never ever have David Live. And eventually, there it was. So I picked it up, got the train home, and I thought what I should do is I should listen to the whole thing, because it turns out Panic in Detroit is midway through the second disc. It's only fair to listen to the whole thing. I'll get the feel of the concert, Knock on Wood, Sweet Thing, the whole thing, right? And Diamond Dogs, which by the way is great. I'm completely wrong in ignoring that one. And then I thought, no, I can't do this. No, I've got to put in. So I put in disc 2, fast forward it with the remote to Panic in Detroit. And the song starts, Up comes Earl's solo, and it is, no surprises here, magnificent. It's 10 years ahead of its time. Absolutely 10 years, at least, ahead of its time. And it is an incredible solo. Now, I've listened to this solo on many occasions since I got the album. And lots of times I've sat down on a guitar and just thought, what is he playing at? And I've just found a lot of it indecipherable. you know. So in the next few videos, I'm going to try and break down Earl's playing on Panic in Detroit, and we'll see how far we get. So, you know, never judge a book by its cover. If you read a bad review of something and it says, you know, the guitar playing is awful, there's actually a quote in the review that says, and in case you didn't believe it, he goes back and plays it again, because the solo's it's extremely long. You know, even for that era when you got a lot of long guitar solos. As I say, this one coming up is going to be a long one, right? But if you can find that album, David Live, I'm sure a lot of you have got it, and you turn to Panic in Detroit and just, you know, stretch out and grab a beer or something and listen to Earl Slick's solo. It is absolutely magnificent. So if anyone has any interest in learning some of the licks, and some of it is indecipherable, I would have to say, you know, as somewhat of a cop-out, bear with me and we'll go on a journey into Earl Slick with David Bowie and Panic in Detroit.